Being the object of hate makes you really focus on the world that you live in, because it's upfront and personal and in your face. Asian Americans are always in a state of perpetual vigilance. It's sort of kind of a condition of citizenship. You have to always be sort of kind of aware of your surroundings, how other citizens view you. It's very exhausting. I'm Shirley G. I'm currently working with the Vietnamese American Community Center of the East Bay, also referred to as VACCEB. I'm also a community activist of long standing here in the city of Oakland.
I'm Sean Fong. I'm Shirley G's son. I'm a volunteer here at VACCEB, and I helped get the VACCEB's food program up off the ground late last year.
We are the Vietnamese American Community Center, and our core competency is serving the Vietnamese community and the Asian community. But we also are very protective of immigrants and refugees in general. So we have a very strong contingency of what they call MENA, which is Middle Eastern and North African communities that we serve because they live right here in the neighborhood. Social navigation is a really difficult proposition for immigrants. Part of the reason that we develop a center for wraparound service is so that they can go to one location and get all the services that they need, from food security to education to employment to health. We wanted to have a place that they could come for all of those services, and we would bring the services to them. Anything that they might need as an immigrant or a refugee, they can come here for those services. And that's, our primary role, is to be a safe place.
We are at the Vietnamese American Community Center of the East Bay, also known as VACCEB, in Oakland, California, on the corner of International and 7th Ave. I'm going to take you on a tour from the reception area. As you can see, much storage here. This actually supports the food program. But before pandemic, you would find a lot of the Vietnamese seniors here gathered, congregating, singing karaoke, eating their lunch, just hanging out and having community. During the pandemic, obviously we couldn't run those programs, so it became a meal bag prep area. This was actually the old computer lab. This is where the fire started. On the other side of these walls, it obviously destroyed all of the computer equipment and furniture that was in here.
February 6th, 1:30 in the morning, I get this prompter from my Citizen app, and it said there's a building on fire, and I listened to the crosstalk between the OPD and the fire department, and they said a homeless encampment had set the building, and I knew exactly which building it was. It was our building. So jumped out of my pajamas, came running down here in time to see the building on fire. It was very distressing. My estimation is going to be, minimally about $350K just to refurbish, reconstruct, things like our computer lab.
My mom's always known that this was like at least $1 million endeavor to try to get things back to normal. So I guess the $350K is the part where she doesn't think that the city and the insurance is going to cover. So yeah, that makes sense.
Provide legal service, education, employment, family services, housing services. If you want to see the history of VACCEB, starting in 1994, all the way to this ended in 2017, but here we are in 2021.
I grew up in China Hill. When you look on the map, it's called Cleveland Heights. Historically, it was actually the only neighborhood my grandfather, after he got out of the army, was allowed to buy property, along with other Chinese people that had the means. Around that same time, there was the white flight movement to the suburbs. But because people like my grandfather were settling in that neighborhood, it became known as Chinaman Hill, which at the time was derogatory and negative, right? Oh, you live in Chinaman Hill, that's no good. That's where all the Chinamen live. But it was the only place my grandfather was able to lay down roots and buy a house. This is where China Hill starts. There's Lake Merritt's over there. There's a hill that separates where we are and the lake, and that's China Hill.
I grew up in this park. We used to play on the swings. That was the only playground that was available to us, and it was directly across from the laundry, that my mom and dad, owned. Say hi.
Tell us one more time where we are.
It's my grandma's house, my grandmother and my grandfather's house.
I grew up in this house. My dad bought this when they still had redlining and segregation, and it was before the Civil Rights Act. And the one reason he was able to buy it too, because he was a World War II vet, so he was able to get a GI loan.
This is where it started. This is where our cultural struggle started.
One of the things I think, we realized was that even with education, without political empowerment, you can't go anywhere. When I went to look at the map, the electoral map, I realized that they had the Asians completely fragmented into 3 different districts, so they could never, ever elect a city council person. And so I, went to Stanford, did a lot of research legislatively on the Voters' Right Act and what it said and what can be done. And then I sat down and I started drawing a map and mobilized the Asian community around that Asian map. The Asians and the Latinos formed an alliance, and then we went to the African Americans and said, this is what we're doing. Can you endorse our map? And so we worked with the African Americans too as well. And that was the map that we took to City Council, and we actually got it passed. And that map to this day prevails. I mean, it's still the same.
Because, my mom made it an empowering place to be from, a place of political power for Asian people. So maybe China Hill would mean something different to me if she didn't do all that work. I don't know. I just knew that, when I was growing up, there was a lot of Chinese people that lived in my neighborhood. It was almost predominantly Chinese, every house after house. And it was a nice place to be from.
I think it's important to note that the staff, almost without exception, are either immigrants or children of immigrants. And so they have a real understanding of the immigrant experience. It's not just a job for them. It's a calling, essentially.
For me, a lot of the work I do here is personal. I come from a Vietnamese family of immigrants that kind of heavily relied on public benefits. So because of that, I really, understand the resources and the support services that immigrants and refugees need when they come here. A lot of our clients are elders who can't leave their house. They were so impacted by COVID-19 because they're medically vulnerable, so they can't leave their house. So we're kind of protecting them that way by delivering food to their doorsteps for them. We deliver to our clients twice a month or every 2 weeks, and they receive like a 15-pound meal bag as well as a bag of produce. These community markets, ethnic small business stores rely on the community members for business. So we want to make sure we're not actually taking business away from these stores, but actually contributing to it. So this aisle is where we actually source most of our toppers for the Asian meal bags. For instance, we have like shelled peanuts here, mung beans, sesame seeds, rice paper to our left, as well as like canned fish and black bean sauce. That's one of the items they really like. In addition to that, just in honor of Asian holidays like Lunar New Year's, we would give them gift bags and add special items. So for this year, Lunar New Year, we gave them sticky rice, which they really liked. Cảm ơn nhiều. Giờ tôi tới với cái bok choy phải không?
Dạ.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Cảm ơn nhiều. Yeah.
I think most of us have the same distressing reaction to the Atlanta event and subsequent events that involved anti-Asian hate.
I don't know, it's a jumble of emotions, there's like anger, there's grief and fear, but also like a sense of like still trying to hold your head up high and still be proud to be Asian. I felt like I had to put my personal emotions aside and like kind of like be more focused on our clients and be more focused on this community.
I was also thinking about using hate, and trying to change that narrative to like Asian violence or racism, because that's really what it is, and using the slogan hate is very empty. It also kind of renders our community as like passive towards hate or just like very soft, when really it's like the antithesis of that, you know? And then also recognizing, yeah, it's the Asian community, but we make up so many different ethnicities in it, you know? And we need to recognize those stories. You have Southeast Asians, East Asians, South Asians, and I feel like those stories are not really being recognized in the media.
It is a generational struggle. You know, when we talk about the pearls of bitterness and having to take each incident as like the bead, and you just keep stringing them together, and then at the end you have this long strand of pearls that represents your life. My mother had hoped that she would not pass on that strand of pearls as a legacy to us, right? That the world would be better. The sad part is we had to do the same thing. We had to take each pearl of bitterness for every event that took place in our lives. And we've been stringing it together, bead by bead. And I'm wearing the same pearls of bitterness that my mother did. But here we are, you know, 2021, and we're dealing with anti-Asian hate still. I always go back to, you know, Coach Doc Rivers' comment, you know, how do you love a country that doesn't love you back? You know, what more do we have to do? You know, we've become brain surgeons, we've become doctors, engineers. We've helped build this country. And we're still not, you know, we still have conditional citizenship even if we're born here. So what more do we have to do?
Asians really aren't covered very much, just in general. And then when you have all this recurring coverage that's saying Asians are victims of this, or Asians are victims of hate crimes, or of crimes, or property crimes, or whatever you want to put it, you know, the only thing that's being reinforced is that Asians are victims. And I think one important way maybe we could reframe everything that's going on is just the resilience, I think, in the, you know, AAPI community. I mean, if you just think about even like the seniors who like, you know, come to our center, they will come out at like 7 a.m., you know, for a distribution that starts at 12 or 1 because they really want to make sure that they have their food. And I think, you know, they stand out there, whatever, even cold weather, you know, walking all the way, some of them walking all the way from West Oakland, you know, and they've persisted in this country with, you know, whatever skills they have, usually with limited English abilities. So, you know, all of this really shows that, you know, everybody in our community, you know, both immigrants and, you know, the descendants of immigrants have proven themselves to be very resilient.
When I think of like resilience and strength, I always look back at my family's history and how they got here. My dad was in the war, and then he was like in prison for 7 years. And they came here in the 90s with 5 kids and then had 2 more. So I'm 1 in 6 girls. Long lineage of like strong, resilient women. So just thinking of that and like bringing that energy to surface reminds me of like how strong we are.
We grew up in between 2 cultures. We were raised by immigrant parents, and I think that many of us identify pretty strongly with our parents' narratives. And I think our future generation can be the stronghold against the challenges that have yet to come.
I know I've experienced things, I felt things, but I myself am struggling to find the right words, but you know, through listening and just trying to understand, you know, how everybody feels, you know, really helps to try to create the space for them to find those words. So for somebody that maybe feels like, yeah, soft target or weak, and there's probably other people that feel that same way. And guess what? If you speak those words to, you know, let's say 1 million people that also feel that way, you might start putting something together where you guys are all collectively stronger than you thought you were. If you got words, you got experiences, you're able to participate, put all that to work and find communities that will support you in what you want to do and create the world that you want to see.
Keep in mind that whenever there's this crisis out there, we don't have resources to do these things. We just do them. VACCEB is part of a community of community-based organizations, and all community-based organizations need support, just like us. we still have a long ways to go, you know, in terms of full citizenship, not conditional citizenship. And we have to keep talking about it. We have to keep being visible, not invisible. And VACCEB is here to make sure that all of that happens.